Happy Dragon Ball Daima release date, everybody. I have been so excited about this series and can't believe the day for new Dragon Ball content is finally here. Daima is releasing today, October 11th, 2024 on Crunchyroll and in Japan, and it will also be released worldwide on Netflix October 18th. One of the things that I'm going to be doing to commemorate the release of Dragon Ball Daima, as well as get myself hyped for this new series, is I'm going to be completing Yair's drawing challenge of Super Saiyan Kid Goku from Dragon Ball Daima that he did a few weeks ago. For those of you who aren't familiar with Yair, he has a very popular and large YouTube channel where he shows how to draw various Dragon Ball characters as well as other anime characters. He's incredibly talented, and he has a drawing course that I took about a year ago called the Ultimate Drawing Kit, which is really cool because it's geared towards drawing Dragon Ball style characters, and it's one of the only art courses that I've ever really seen that kind of hones in on that art style, which is something that I was looking to improve. So thank you, Yair, for putting that together. I know it's not always available for purchase. He has periods of time where there's a waiting list and then the course is open for enrollment. So I will leave the info to his page in the link to this video. Okay, so here is a closer, more detailed look of Yair's awesome drawing that I'm going to be trying to recreate or redraw in my own style. So let's get back to the drawing and see what I can come up with. Okay, so the first thing I want to do is I have the image that Yair drew over on the left there, and in my sub view window within Clip Studio Paint, I've got some pictures of Kid Goku, the one that Yair drew, as well as other images of him, just to get some different looks at his face, his body, just to kind of get a feel for the proportions as I try to figure out the basic shapes before I move on to other aspects of this. So far on this channel, I haven't really showcased how much I actually like drawing Kid Goku specifically. I have a lot of Kid Goku drawings that I've done over the years. I just haven't, for whatever reason, shared those yet on this channel, but I will, so be on the lookout for those. But he's one of my all-time favorite characters to draw. I just have a lot of fun drawing him every single time, and this was a lot of fun to do too. You just saw me kind of flip Goku 180 to just get a better angle on drawing that chin, which gave me quite a bit of trouble at the beginning. For some reason, facial structures, especially the jawline and the chin, that's always difficult for me to nail, and I'm a bit of a perfectionist about it, but I always want to make sure that looks perfect before I consider continuing. Another thing that's really key for me is nailing the facial expression. This facial expression, he's very serious and ready for battle, so I wanted to capture that intensity in my drawing as well, which is why I spent quite a bit of time messing around with his face and just trying to hone in on those details and get them exactly how I wanted them to be. And for me, one of the biggest aspects of a drawing is getting the face correct. I mean, you have to be able to look at the drawing and say, yes, this looks like Goku. Otherwise, I didn't accomplish what I set out to do. So it's very important for me to take the time to really understand what the facial structure is and then be able to execute on my drawing the expressions and looks that I'm trying to get. I want to talk a little bit about my personal excitement for this series, and I know that not everybody was excited for Dragon Ball Daima. A lot of fans wanted a continuation of Dragon Ball Super, which I wanted as well, and I hope that we will get that one day. However, I am really excited to see what's done here, and there's a few reasons why I'm so excited about it. First and foremost, this is the last project that Akira Toriyama got to work on before he passed away, and many of us know that. I did not have this YouTube channel when Akira Toriyama passed away, but it was a very upsetting time for me as well as many of the fans in the Dragon Ball community. And for me personally, I really would not be an artist at all if it wasn't for Akira Toriyama. My brothers and I grew up drawing only Dragon Ball characters because we were so obsessed with this awesome series. And that continued into my adult life. So Akira Toriyama has had a huge impact on my life. When people ask me who is your all-time favorite artist, without hesitation, I say Akira Toriyama. So for that reason, knowing that this is the last thing that he worked on, I have to see it just because I am such a fan of his. And when I'm watching this series, I'm just going to be watching it with a very grateful mindset. I'm grateful that we're even able to see more of Akira Toriyama's work. Now, the fact that this is the last thing he's working on adds a lot of weight to it, and a lot of us hope that this is good, and I hope it's really good, but even if it's not, I'm going to be able to say, I can appreciate this. This is my favorite artist's last work, and it deserves respect, so I cannot wait to see what they bring to the table with this one. And of course, my condolences to Akira Toriyama's family. I know they must be going through a very trying time. It must be a very difficult year for them. It's a big loss for anybody in the manga or anime world. He was such a legend and such an inspiration to many other artists, like the artists who did One Piece, Naruto. We also have to remember the influence outside of Dragon Ball. He created Dr. Slump. He worked on character designs for Dragon Quest, Chrono Trigger, Blue Dragon, and of course Sandland, which I haven't even seen yet. I've been meaning to watch that. I just haven't had the chance yet. So his influence is seen in a multitude of areas. Thank you, Akira. The second reason I'm really excited about this series is the reveal that we just got a few weeks ago for those of us who watch the English dub. And that is that Stephanie Nadolny is going to be returning to voice Kid Goku. And this really is just the icing on the cake for me. I am so excited that she's coming back. I think she was an incredible Kid Goku as well as Gohan. She really brought it with her performances for both of those characters. The announcement that she was coming back was such a pleasant surprise, but really something that I never thought was going to happen. And for many of us who are in the Dragon Ball community, we know that Stephanie Nadolny was not brought back for Dragon Ball Z Kai, and it's not really known why, other than it sounds like there was some kind of a falling out or some kind of contentious thing that went on behind the scenes. So none of us really know what that is, and it doesn't really matter. I mean, hopefully they've solved it and moved past it. I'm happy for Stephanie. She's a very nice person. Both times that I've met her, she's signed artwork that I made and just been really nice and super friendly. So I am happy for her, and I can't wait to see her in this role. The third reason that I'm really excited for this series, and this is probably the most silly of the three, but I just really like Kid Goku. So I want to see Kid Goku turn into a Super Saiyan. I think that's going to be really cool. We know that it's going to happen because it's in the trailer, and obviously we're drawing a Super Saiyan version of Kid Goku for Daima here. So we know that he's going to do at least this in this series. So I'm excited to see where they're going to go with this. I do recognize that it looks a lot like Dragon Ball GT. And I know that many people didn't like Dragon Ball GT. I actually just rewatched it last year. There are parts of the series that, as much as I love this franchise, there's parts of Dragon Ball GT that are nearly unwatchable. But there are other parts that are really good, like the Super Saiyan 4 transformation, the Baby Saga, the Omega Shenron stuff. I thought those parts were all like pretty cool ideas. The Black Star Dragon Balls, the overuse of the Dragon Balls as a theme, those were all cool things. So I don't dislike GT as much as other people, and I'm kind of excited to see this, even if it ends up being a rehash of Dragon Ball GT. But I guess we're gonna have to just sit, be patient, and find out if that's what this is, or maybe it has similar elements but is a different and more compelling entry into this franchise. You can see me adding some detail to the previous shapes of his face and the hair. And specifically, let's talk about the hair here, because with Super Saiyan hair, you've got to make sure the angles are right. Like it's not rounded at all. Most of the time, you've got very angular pieces of hair, like you're seeing me attempt to draw here. And one thing that I personally struggle with is making the ends of the hair pointy enough. I'd spent a lot of time trying to perfect that here and make it look how it's actually supposed to look, but it took very long to kind of figure that out. I think one of the really fun mysteries that people who are awaiting Dragon Ball Daima have had since the trailers have come out is kind of just trying to piece together what's going to happen or have theories about what's going to happen. And one of the really interesting things that I've heard people say and thought myself is, in these trailers, we see almost everybody. Almost everybody. You see Master Roshi, Krillin, Vegeta, Goku, Yamcha, Supreme Kai. All of these characters are transformed into kids or babies like Trunks and Goten. But who do we not see? We even see Piccolo. But you know who we don't see? Gohan. And I'm very, very interested to know why we don't see Gohan. Did he not get affected by whatever happened? Or is there some other kind of story element as to why he wasn't shown in the trailer? I feel like it's very telling that he wasn't in any of the trailer material so far. And I'll be very interested to see what happens with that. I want to hear what you guys think the reasoning is for not showing Gohan in the Daima trailers has been. So please leave me a comment on this video and let me know what you think is going on with that. As we continue with the drawing, you can see my flow and how I like to go about making a drawing. So basically what I do is I start out with a layer and I draw the basic shapes, and they're really, really rough. And then as we continue through the drawing, I will change the opacity to like 50% or less for the current layer, and then I'll make a new layer on top of it and kind of just refine that shape or that form, eventually getting to the point where I'm adding details like these little eyebrow lines here and the little areas where the grooves in the ear are, like this right here. So that's kind of what I do. I just keep using, I use a ton of layers. Usually on my drawings, I use at least like 20 to 50 layers, and that includes the coloring raster layers as well as vector layers, which is what I'm using here. And basically the reason why I'm using vector layers instead of raster layers for the line art is with a vector layer you can change different aspects about the line art. Like you can transform it and move it around like I just did. You can go down to the left hand side of this page. There's an area almost all the way at the bottom where you can make the line art actually thicker or thinner depending on what you want to do, and you can only do that if you have a vector layer on. So that's one of the tricks that I use to try to get the line art as close to how I want it to be as it can be. And speaking of adjusting the opacity, you can see I just did that. The black lines are now much more gray, which happens after you turn the opacity down, and then I can kind of fine-tune what I've already done, look at it, think to myself, like, is this what I want it to look like? Let me adjust this here, that there. Let me try to get this eyebrow to look a little bit more like how Goku should look. And you kind of just pick away, chip away at it until you start seeing what you want to see. And once I have all the line art done, I'll kind of take a look at it and I'll say, is this ready to be colored? Sometimes I won't let myself color it the same day. I think it's really important to take a break from your art sometimes, maybe even come back to it another day, like the day after. Look at it again and say to yourself with a fresh mind and some rest, did I accomplish everything I wanted to before I color it? And a lot of times I will find some mistakes that I want to correct after doing that. So I always encourage people, don't rush through your drawing. You don't have to do the drawing in one sitting in order for it to come out as good as it possibly can be. And even though this video is showing one continuous shot throughout, I didn't do this whole thing in one day. I did this over the course of like a week. Altogether, I think this drawing took between 3 to 5, maybe 6 hours to do in total. But again, that's not all one continuous sitting period. It's over the course of 4 days to a week to complete. So basically, my biggest advice to anybody who's getting started with the hobby of drawing is don't rush yourself and don't put so much pressure on yourself to finish a drawing in one sitting. It's okay to take a break. It's okay to stop and come back to it in a few hours, even in a few days if you have to. It's not really important that you get it done fast, especially if you're doing this as a hobby. It's really just more important that you improve and get better every time. So that's what I try to think whenever I'm making one of these. Now I'm continuing to add the details to the hair, and every once in a while I'll take a look back at Yair's image that he drew and kind of use that as my reference, checking to see if I'm doing it somewhat similar to how he did it. I don't want it to be the exact same thing, but this is a redraw challenge, so we have to keep that in mind. But drawing the hair detail lines is fun because it's close to the end of the line art, and it means that things are coming together and almost ready to be colored. So that's always a fun point in the project. I'm trying my absolute best to make the ends of the hair as pointy as possible, and you'll see me kind of drawing some hair, not really liking the point on it, either hitting the undo button or using the lasso tool to surround what I don't like and delete it. I don't use the soft eraser as much unless I'm using it as a vector eraser. So I will often more likely use the undo button or that lasso tool to erase things. Now I've started on my final line art layer, which will be the last vector layer that I do before I start coloring. So this will be like the line art layer going forward. And I'm using the Clip Studio Paint textured pen. I like the way that looks because it gives it kind of a little bit like a grainy, almost as if you were using a real pen or some kind of a pencil. And I just like the finish that it gives the piece, so I usually use that on all of my drawings. If not, I'll use the simple G pen, but most of the time I'll go with this textured pen. And I'm pretty sure that the textured pen is a free asset within Clip Studio Paint's asset store. So all you would really have to do is go in, click on pens, or just go into the search bar and type in textured pen. It should be able to come up for you. So now I duplicated that final line art layer, and I am using the tool that's used to either thicken or thin out lines, and I'm going to be thickening some lines just to give the line art some line weight. The reason that that's being done is to just make the piece have more depth and look more interesting than if everything was the exact same weight. Adding line weight is a fun thing to do, especially when it's done and I think it looks good, but it's actually kind of a difficult concept to understand, like which part you should be adding weight to and which you shouldn't. For me, it's more of a trial and error thing, so I kind of just see what looks good and go with that. Next up, we're going to be starting to finally color this. So I'm starting to add some base colors. I made a raster layer, and I don't know if I labeled it, but I usually try to label it as a base color layer, and then I'll do another raster for the medium shade and another raster for the dark shade. And you probably just saw me open up a file of a Super Saiyan Goku from Namek. That's something that I drew years ago. The reason that I did that is I didn't exactly like the colors that I got from using the dropper on the drawing to the right in the subview window. So I just loaded in that Namek Goku into the subview window because I know that I like that skin tone for Goku. So that's what I ended up kind of doing on this one. This is a really good example of the ink dropper or color dropper that you can use in the subview window not always giving you the result you think it's going to. And what I mean by that is, I think that Yair's colors in the subview window and in the reference image look awesome, but the ink dropper isn't a perfect tool, meaning that it doesn't always give me the exact color that's in the reference image. So when something like that happens, I'll either just kind of eyeball it and use the dropper as a starting point and then just adjust the color on the color wheel until I like what I see, or I'll just go into another file like that M.A.Sketchbook Goku and say, oh, I know I like that skin tone, and I'm actually the one who drew that, so it should be the exact same color. And usually it is the exact same color if it's from a file of something that you already drew in Clip Studio Paint. So it's important to keep that in mind when using that tool. Usually when I'm coloring things, I will start with the base colors, then do the medium shade, then do the dark shade. But for whatever reason on this particular drawing, I decided to do the base colors and then do the darkest shade first and then kind of fill in with the medium shade at the end. I don't know if I thought that was easier to do here or if I was just trying something out. It kind of just worked out that way. And when I'm doing my coloring, there's 3 specific tools that I will usually use to do the actual coloring. The first one is just the regular pen, the textured pen that I used to do the line art. A lot of times that works just fine for me. I just draw the lines that I'm gonna be coloring for the cell shading, and then I'll use the fill tool with the little paint bucket to finish that and color that in. Or I will use it's within the pen tool, it's a subsection of the pen tool called marker, and I'll just use the Milli pen and do the exact same technique that I was just talking about with the pen tool. And then finally, a lot of times, and this is something I started using more recently, is I will use the lasso tool, and I'll basically use the lasso to draw the shape of what I want colored. And then within the lasso tool, there's a little option that is fill within the selection. So that's what I'll end up doing a lot of times now. I usually try to break up the coloring into chunks where you saw me tackle all of the skin tones first, from base to dark layers, and then I move on to something like what I'm doing right now, which is the hair, where I'm starting with the darkest layer and then I'm gonna continue coloring it until all of the hair is done. And then I'll probably move on to the clothing, and then I'll be done with the coloring. But this is basically the process that I use. I like to complete the small steps first, and then by the end of it, the entire thing is finished. And the biggest reason why I like to color like this is just that coloring can be a daunting task, or seem like it's a very time-consuming thing to do. So in order to make it easier on myself, and maybe it's just the way my brain works, but the way I think about it is, if I break up the steps of coloring into small chunks or small pieces, they seem more completable and easier to do. So that's the reason why I do it that way. One of the other reasons that I'm really excited for Dragon Ball Daima is I just kind of miss the magic of the original Dragon Ball. The original Dragon Ball, I feel like gets overlooked quite a bit by the average Dragon Ball fan. Probably because many people, including myself in the United States, were shown Dragon Ball Z first, which is kind of like showing people The Empire Strikes Back before showing them A New Hope. I mean, it's the most exciting part of the story as far as fights and high stakes, saving the universe type stuff, but you skip a lot of the world building from the original Dragon Ball. Don't get me wrong, I love DBZ, and DBZ is the reason that I'm here doing this drawing, but at the same time, I remember being a kid and seeing Dragon Ball Z first, and then a couple years into it, they released the English dub for Dragon Ball, and I remember watching it with my brothers and enjoying it, but as a kid being like, oh, he can't turn Super Saiyan. So what I didn't realize then, and what I now have an appreciation for, is The strength of the actual story and the focus more so on adventure and martial arts technique in Dragon Ball is unmatched. Dragon Ball has some of the best tournament arcs in all of anime that I've seen. And overall, I do think it's the strongest entry in the series. So if Dragon Ball Daima ends up being anything remotely similar to the original Dragon Ball as far as focusing more on martial arts, adventure, the friendships between the characters, we're going to be in for an awesome treat. I would suggest to anybody who's a casual fan or just a fan that's maybe never seen the original Dragon Ball, you really need to sit down and watch it. It's really going to be worth your time. You'll understand certain relationships with certain characters much better than if you just went straight into DBZ. Like, you'll understand the relationships between Yamcha, Tien, and Goku, as well as Piccolo. They all started out as villains in Dragon Ball and then became friends of Goku. Even Krillin started out as somewhat of an adversary to Goku in original Dragon Ball. Also, you'll be able to understand Goku's relationship with Master Roshi a lot better than you do if you just watch DBZ, because Roshi's heavily featured throughout Dragon Ball, way more so than Dragon Ball Z. Okay, so it looks like I'm just about done here. So in a couple of seconds, I am going to finish this up, and it is time for the reveal of my entry in Yair's drawing challenge. Check it out. And there you have it, guys, the final reveal for my entry into Yair's drawing challenge of Daima Super Saiyan Goku. And if you like this video, please like the video and please consider subscribing to the channel. And also let me know, are you guys also excited for Dragon Ball Daima? Happy Daima release day, everybody, and thank you for watching.